Welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, dedicated to exploring the interesting journeys of the people in the provincial construction industry. Presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. Join us as we chat with the inspirational individuals that ensure the continued growth of the construction industry and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
To the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. Here we are at the Build Expo 2023, and it is exciting here on the trade show floor, in conversation with people that are mulling about, exhibitors, people that are presenting. I'm Alan Dale. With me as always, my good buddy Jerry Curl. Fraser, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Fraser Piccott. I've been involved in the construction, I retired, matter of fact, from the construction industry. Been involved for many decades, I'll put it that way. And one of my favorite times was with the construction industry, both the heavy and the civil, and mainly with what was called back then years ago Newfoundland Tractor, which was a Caterpillar dealer here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I was very fortunate with that organization to have covered the complete island in a management role. Therefore I got to go to, there were 27 isolated communities in our province that had cat power generation, and every fisherman around the coast understands Caterpillar engines. A lot of people forget that a lot of those boats are there. They see a Caterpillar machine. They just think about Caterpillar, but they don't think what's inside. So that journey over the past 30 years basically was very fortunate. I got to meet an awful lot of wonderful people, not just from the construction industry, but also from many of the communities around our coast, and right from Nain up north to Ramia down south and every place in between, to spend some time with them, and not only from a business point of view, but also from the pleasure of their company. And I think that's an important component sometimes that's missing out of business, that relationship that was once there, this face-to-face, this personal relationship. Yes, to get on a skidoo and be invited to go from Fort Howe up to Port Hope Simpson on a skidoo with good friends up in Fort Howe, and it was a joy to do it, and a great excitement that I remember forever. Looking at the trade show is so fabulous to see and walk around this place and see so many faces that I still do know. But one of the biggest trade shows that were ever around, a lot of times during the construction, was what was called it was called Voisey Bay and Beyond. Prior to Voisey Bay becoming Voisey's Bay, then it turned into Expo Labrador. So I think I went to 19 of those conventions. Fantastic conventions. The optimism within the province is exceptional. The growth opportunity is still here, and it was great to hear the Premier today talk about the 300 million plus on some of the highway developments that are going on. When I was involved with business, obviously one of the important components of being involved in business is to contribute or give back to the community. And I look at that as one of the most important parts of, I can pass now almost 50 years of being involved in our community, from particularly persons with disabilities. And I've continued that involvement even today. So, and my representation on some of the boards hopefully adds to those boards in how they operate, because of, one, the understanding the importance of having all crossways of life, regardless of the ability or disability of people, being involved. So that's a little bit about me. So
that's wonderful.
That's the first 5 years of his career.
It's obviously you're making an impact and continue to give back. Tell us what you're doing in the moment. What do you do now?
Right now, at the moment, one, I'm partially retired, but I'm also modern printing friend of mine, George Efford, I'm sorry. said, Fraser, would you be interested in doing some part-time business development with me? So from a modern printing group point of view, I'm still doing that part-time, but I'm also on the board of directors of Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation, which also takes up sometimes Seniors NL, Avalon Employment, and a couple of others. So time-wise.
Fraser, tell us a little bit about housing.
Housing, I think, well, you know, when the Premier was here this morning, one part that I know he got a condensed time to talk about certain things, but I think it's great to talk about the affordable housing in our province and how the government is stepping up when it comes to providing affordable housing solutions right across our province. And they only announced, I know Minister Abbott announced, and the Premier I think was involved with the announcement too, of $70 million over the next really 2.5 years.
Wow.
And the $70 million, that is an incentive to the construction industry and not-for-profit organizations to bring to the table possibly another couple of $100 million to develop however many houses that can actually generate across our province. So from an important, particularly to this organization, the construction side of it, I forget the exact number between now and the next 3 to 4 years, but I think there's something like 800 homes that could, or at least 800 accommodations, if you like. So that'll be apartment buildings, not necessarily just single, but high-rise. There's a 41 unit that's going to be built down in Pepperell. This is a new program that's coming up, so from an investor point of view, if a person or a company wanted to build and access some of these funds, that money is there. Right. And for each one that you provide, you can get up to, and I haven't got all the numbers, but previous numbers were between somewhere around $80,000 or $90,000 for each unit you built from the private sector, up to almost 130 if it's a not-for-profit. So it's a super program to alleviate some of the challenges when it comes to affordable housing, which everybody is facing in the province.
Everybody is,
yes.
And not only in Newfoundland, but across the country.
Right. Yes, it is.
You know, it's good to see Newfoundland stepping up like that.
Yes.
But you're right, it has a direct impact on all the people in this room.
Absolutely.
The Construction Association, all of those things the Premier talked about today had direct impact on the people in this room. Exciting time.
Yes, and it's really great to see the government taking those initiatives. I know there's challenges, and I know that you hear criticisms and so on, but I've always been a positive person when it comes to, I guess, saying what's good in this province. And I still remember when I was chair of the Safe Grad. This was back many years ago. I think it was my son or daughter. I forget when it was. And what advice do you have to give to young people or people in general? I said, well, if there isn't a path, cut one and leave a trail. So we're doing that here in this province. I think our province has an awful lot to be proud of, and we should be celebrating everything that's going on. The negativity is there, but I prefer to spend time on what is happening that is good, but also direct, if there's challenges, yes, let's talk about them, but find solutions.
Well, let me ask you this, Fraser. Why Newfoundland and Labrador housing? What about that made you want to put your efforts and time into
Well, one of the important parts was to bring to the board, and a lot of boards miss the importance of persons with disabilities. One of my other roles, a hat that I wore for a few years, was chair of what's called the Provincial Advisory Council for the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in the province. So when you bring that to the board, okay, the new houses that you see have what's called a universal design concept, so that anyone can walk into that building. Don't have to worry about how wide something is. It's designed to be accessible. Levels and high, whatever is there, if you think in your own mind, when you walk into any place, when there's objects in the way, whether they're physical, whether it's visual, you just ensure that that's any buildings that we put forward from moving forward, that accessibility is a major component. So that was one of the reasons that I felt compelled to say when I was asked to serve on the board that yes, if you bring this to it, I'm quite happy to do it. When I was asked to be chair of the Provincial Advisory Council, and I know it's a mouthful, for the inclusion of persons with disabilities, I said, well, there's two objectives. I said one would be that we have legislation in the province that protects the rights of persons with disabilities. We now have that. It passed in the House of Assembly about a year and a half ago, and we have accessibility legislation. And the second part, and this is a great opportunity for me to talk about it, for persons with disability, is a thing called what's called the Registered Disability Savings Plan. Now you say, what is that? Well, each individual that has a disability has the right to get what's called a disability tax credit. The disability tax credit is a key to getting what's called the Registered Disability Savings Plan. I'll give you an example of how important it is. I gave a session down in Bay Verte. The lady there, the treasurer at the Legion, said, "What's this about, Fraser?" I told her it was about persons with disabilities and a program that the federal government has. Well, would I call my nephew? He has cerebral palsy. And I said, my God, yes. How old is he, by the way? 48 years old. He'll be 49 this year. The program ends when you turn 49. So on December 31st of the year you turn 49, the program is gone. But, so he came. And there's a calculator that's available that you bring up on the screen. You put in his particulars. Because he had the disability tax credit, I said, okay, well, federal government's going to go back 10 years, and here's $10,000 going into your retirement fund. Provincial government has a program, I realize it's $150, but the $150 generates 3 times that amount by the federal government. So here's another $600. You have an opportunity once in your life to put in $3,500. The gentleman, there's no way he could afford it. But the community knew him. So the community put together a GoFundMe, raised $3,500. So the $3,500 generated 3 times that amount. So all of a sudden he had in his registered retirement plan roughly $26,000. At age 59, when he finally takes it out, he'll be getting roughly $300 a month, but he will draw down roughly $60,000 during his retirement. Wow. That's a worst case scenario. Now, we have in our province 8,000 people who have a disability tax credit that don't have an RDSP. We're the lowest in all of Canada when it comes to uptake of that program. So that's another one that is on my bucket list.
That's an incredible story and a real interesting thing to focus on, for sure.
Yes.
Fraser, absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you. You've done a lot. You continue to do a lot. You got your fingers in a lot. Tell me about the importance of the NLCA and that association.
I think when you bring the Construction Association, all the members of and what they contributed back into our community from right across both Newfoundland and Labrador, I think they bring an extensive opportunity for employment. The business, it all has to come from, a lot of it comes from government and private enterprise to generate our economy. Our economy needs it. We need the skilled trades. We need the skilled people. We need the graduates from the university, whether it's from engineers to the bricklayer, all vitally important regardless of the job you do. So I think the association, not only by giving back to the community, which they do, but I'd love to know what's the bottom line of the amount of money that comes from the salaries of people who work in this industry. It's enormous.
Yeah.
I don't know it offhand, but I think they're part of every community that's out there.
100%.
And they make our communities here in this province what they are. Because it's the guy next door.
100%.
It's the guy that's down the road, the girl that's down the road, or the person that's down the road. And they all contribute back to making Newfoundland and Labrador what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's a vital component of any organization, is to, one, recognize their own members, saying thank you to, from a community point of view, to say thank you to those employers, and thank you to all the workers for the work that they do in making our province what it is today. So.
No better way to end this conversation than that.
Well, without this industry, we wouldn't have the infrastructure to make a living. No one would. Right?
Exactly. And people don't realize that sometimes the importance of what each industry, whether it's fishing, I mean the fishermen, hopefully today at 11 o'clock they got a conference about the crab, and I mean that's $1 billion industry, and that really contributes to rural Newfoundland so much. The construction happens everywhere. Every little community, whether it's Nain in the north, go back to Ramy in the south, and or coming into St. John's.
You were on the board at one point. Were you the chair of the NLCA?
No,
at one point?
no.
But you were on the board?
No, not on the board.
Okay.
I was involved with it. Myself and Rhonda, by the way. Rhonda, as you know, is chair of this board, but she's also chair of Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation, and that's my connection there. But then, from an industry point of view, yes, I went to all their bonspiels and I had lots of booths here with Newfoundland Tractor all over the place, and everybody came up to me to say, "Where's my hat?"
Well, you're certainly given to a lot of other organizations, isn't he, Alan?
Real pleasure to be in conversation with you.
No,
Thank you, sir.
thank you so much. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds.